Georgia starts the season out ranked number 3 in the AP poll. Welcome to the Dean Legge Show, another edition here on Dog Post. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Clemson at number 1, Alabama number 2, Georgia, the number 3 team in the country with Oklahoma, Ohio State filling out the top 5. LSU, Michigan, Florida, Notre Dame, and Texas, all top 10 teams. Georgia's going to play. We know for sure they will play Florida and Notre Dame. Neither of them on the road. And then they obviously host Texas A&M. They've got number 16 Auburn. That's their road trip that looks looming as a big game right now. Obviously, Clemson's biggest game of the season will be Texas A&M, who probably won't be a top 10 team by the time the Tigers play them. I'm not sure that they will have a bigger game in the grand scheme of things than that game. But it just shows everyone. Looks like Clemson's going to play 2 ranked teams, and they are in back-to-back weeks after they destroy Georgia Tech in week 1. And then Alabama, their season will start with I would say probably with the game at South Carolina. I mean, that should be a legitimate game that Alabama will borderline be concerned about. I mean, the last time they played there, and this very different times for both programs, I guess, very different time for South Carolina. Carolina beat them bad. So Alabama will play Duke, New Mexico State, and then at Carolina, Southern Miss, Ole Miss. They host both those games. And then they'll travel to Texas A&M in the second week of October on October 12th. That will be, we'll see with Alabama at the end. The beginning, it's going to be harder to know. They really don't play anybody who will challenge them in a severe way. But I did want to go over that. I'm going to, put up on the screen a little bit, talk about some of these teams. Ohio State with Justin was named the starter today. That was an interesting thing to come out today. Ohio State playing as the number 5 team in the country. They really don't have a scary schedule, I wouldn't say. They play 3 ranked teams, one of them barely ranked in Nebraska. They will play an interesting game. They play 3 straight noon games in a row, Ohio State. So that's going to be something to if you want to watch them on TV, you'll get the chance to. But then their season really picks up at the end. They have a challenging end of the year with Penn State, hosting Penn State, and then playing at Michigan. So those 2 games, by then, Justin will be completely ready. I don't think Ohio State can really lose at the beginning of the season, but I would watch week 2 and week 3 with Cincinnati coming to the horseshoe. That could be a game, and particularly because it's at noon, that could be a game where Ohio State doesn't play overwhelmingly well and people get a little bit jumpy. And then the week after they get that, they go to Indiana to play a noon game. So they'll play on noon on Fox at week 1, and then ABC, and then Fox again. So probably not really big ratings, but Ohio State always draws. And then their schedule is the toughest of the top 10 teams. You've got Nebraska is not, nobody really knows what to make of Nebraska yet, but Nebraska, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State, and then obviously the season ender with Michigan. A lot of people think Michigan will finally get Ohio State this year. You've got Oklahoma, who has got Jalen Hurts as their starting quarterback. I'm not so certain that, we'll just see with Oklahoma. Again, not an overwhelmingly challenging schedule. They only play 2 ranked teams, so very similar to Clemson in that fashion. They play Texas in the Cotton Bowl. That's going to be a 12 o'clock game on Fox, October 12th. And then Iowa State. Other than that, the Big 12 is bad. Same thing with Texas, but the thing with Texas is they play LSU in week 2. Now that is going to be a game where, definitely that game matters. Now Texas's schedule is light, but they play 2 top 6 teams. So you'll know quickly with Texas by middle of October. You will know if Texas is back or not. They're going to have to prove it to me, though. I got to say, they've got too many weird losses along the way. It's hard to trust them in a way that in the past, and maybe even now, it's hard to trust Clemson in every single game they play. Michigan, a top 7 team. LSU, LSU's got the usual grind. And I'll just go through these other top 10 teams, and I'll get on to the other stuff that happened in the day. LSU sitting at number 6. The Tigers they have the usual, struggle. Of course, they have their second game of the season is against Texas. They open up against Georgia Southern, 7:30 at night. But then they will have the marquee game in the country, week 2 against Texas. That's a great TV game on ABC. And then Florida, they've got October 12th is shaping up to be a great weekend of college football on television. So October 8th will be the Florida game for LSU, and then they play at State. They host Auburn, and they play at Alabama. That's a run. That's a tricky run. Florida State, Auburn, Alabama. You're probably going to lose a game or two in there if you're LSU. And then they close the season at Ole Miss, Arkansas, and hosting Arkansas, and then hosting A&M. Michigan, again, a Big Ten schedule that is hard to really overly respect them, but they do play Notre Dame the week before Georgia, Florida. So you've got a couple of games that should be wins for them. They are on Fox 3 times, and 3 times at noon. So Fox is shifting their best games to noon. So they're doing that with the Texas, Oklahoma. They're doing that with the Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan, Ohio State's always been at noon. But you've got Michigan, Wisconsin. That's a tricky game for Michigan. Better be ready to go. Iowa is supposedly a noon game. Who will play that? I don't know. Who will pick that up? I'm not sure. That's October 5th. And then Penn State, Notre Dame, back-to-back weekends for Michigan. That will probably tail the tail for them. And then in November, they put Michigan State and Ohio State. So an interesting schedule for a team that a lot of people are sort of, I don't know about hyping, but they think that Michigan can do it this year. And another team that's receiving a lot of attention, Florida Gators. They open up with Miami, the Gators are a solid touchdown favorite over Miami. It's hard to see that. It's hard for me to see the Gators losing this game. But, it's the first game of the season. It's hard to know for sure. You've got a brand new quarterback at Miami. And I think the Gators will out-physical them. But we'll see. That's a huge ticket. An Orlando game, ESPN, 7 o'clock. It's kicking off the 100th season of college football. It's a great job of marketing by ESPN, etc., and Disney. And then, for Florida, they're right into it. They got to go to Kentucky, a game they should certainly win, but a game that, they lost last year at home. And they play Tennessee at home. I don't think Tennessee's got anything for Auburn, for Florida, but then it just gets really tough really quick for the Gators. So you've got October 5th, Auburn, October 12th at LSU, then they play at Carolina, they're a week off, and then they play Georgia. They could lose all 4 of those games. Now, I don't think they will, but they could lose all 4 of those games for sure. A lot of teams could lose those games. That's a brutal stretch, 4 or 5 weeks, all but one of them coming on the road or, not at home. So tough slate. And then they've got to still deal with Missouri, a trip to Missouri. So Florida, that could be a cold game. Florida's not so hot in the weather. They're not real good at that. Let's look at Notre Dame, and then I'll talk about the Dogs. Notre Dame's, I don't know their whole season is coming down to the Georgia game. They will kill Louisville. I don't think Louisville is in position to really play against Notre Dame in a way that matters. Then they will host New Mexico, so they've got sort of 2 warm-ups, and then they play Georgia. So the game against Georgia is a CBS game at 8 o'clock at night. Tickets are almost $500 a piece. And then they get a 2-week breather, if you want to call it that. They got to play Virginia the week after Georgia at home. Bowling Green, who they will kill. And they play SC at home. Now, they can't, SC is not a team that should beat Notre Dame. But the other issue is, in a 5-week stretch, they go Georgia, Virginia, Bowling Green, USC, week off, Michigan. The Michigan game, if they've beaten Georgia, the Michigan game will be, hey, are these guys going to coast straight into the playoff again? Because if they beat Michigan, it's at Michigan. If they beat Michigan, there's not a lot on their schedule that can get in their way. You're hosting Virginia Tech. You go to Duke. You host Navy. You host Boston College. Those should all be wins for Notre Dame. And then they would have to go out to Stanford. They make trips every year to California. It just depends who they play. So every other season, it's either Michigan, Stanford, or SC here lately. So in 2007, they lost by 18. 2017, excuse me, they lost by 17 to Stanford to end the season. They've not won at Stanford, it doesn't look like, for a while. So that game could matter in a way that, that matters, or that game could be something that no one really cares about because Notre Dame's not in the running. But I see here they've not won at Stanford this decade. So that is, and I'm still going back. I'm trying to see the last time they won at Stanford. Stanford has been decent in this time. Last time they won over there, by my quick math, is 2007. So a lot of news today. And then the other thing was, did you see the video that Georgia released today that we reported about on Sunday with Matthew Bowling, the track star that Georgia had signed for Georgia's track team, race at the end against Kirby? Well, against the Kirby figured out how to get him to come race against Richard LeCount as the last guy. So Richard had a lead, which he should have had, and then, one lap later, Matthew Bowling was pulling away, looking backwards at Richard, which was kind of interesting. But I think the AP poll is basically right. I mean, it mimics the top 10, completely mimics the coaches poll. After that, it gets a little jumpy from here and there. Auburn sticks in at 16 for both. But 1 through 10 is Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, LSU, Michigan, Florida, Notre Dame, and Texas. It's what's so interesting, and you don't get this a lot, is you getting a lot of top 10 matchups, preseason top 10 matchups in the season. That's just not common. But obviously Alabama, LSU is always going to be a big deal. They're both top 10. Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Notre Dame. You can't do that a lot. LSU, Texas. You don't get that a lot. Obviously, you get Alabama, LSU every season. They're not always top 10 teams. Georgia, Florida, you get every season. They're not always top 10 teams. Texas, OU, they're not always top 10 teams. Well, they're all top 10 teams now. And what we will see is, we've seen in recruiting, specifically Alabama and Georgia, separate themselves from the pack. Ohio State had done the same, but they had a coaching transition. You can't say that they really have been the same as Alabama and Georgia in terms of, recruiting. Now suddenly Clemson is they're going to be tough to catch from behind, but they're the number one class right this second. We'll see. If Georgia nails every single kid along the way, they will probably be the number one class. And I would not doubt Kirby's ability to get kids to come to Georgia. But you're seeing that the teams that are recruiting at a level at which other teams simply are not, they are clustered in the top 5. And that's really starts with Alabama and Georgia. Then it's been Ohio State, and now suddenly Clemson has really started to emerge. Teams that have done pretty well in recruiting, Texas is coming up, Oregon is coming up, and now Texas A&M also is asserting itself. And, for programs like Tennessee, South Carolina, not even talk about South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida State, if they don't get it rolling, it's going to be hard for me to see how they compete in their respective leagues. Clemson is hitting on all cylinders. They've not lost their conference championship in 5 years. Now, it's not been a good conference. I get it. But the only teams that can really run with them are the teams in Florida. And what I mean by run with them is stop them from this roll that they've been on. And until Miami and Florida State get their act together, no one's going to stop Clemson. I don't see it, at least. And by the same token, if Tennessee does not turn things around quickly, if Tennessee doesn't get the ball rolling in recruiting, it's going to be tough for them. And meanwhile, in places like the Big 12, there's basically 2.5 schools. If you want to call Iowa State a team to watch, okay, but, excuse me. it's just hard for me to really think that, you've got two name brand schools in the Big 12, and they are going to be the ones I think that play for the conference championship more often than not. Texas, Oklahoma. The curious thing will be how often will UT and Texas and UT and OU play one another coming up, because that's going to start becoming a semi or a quarterfinal as well. If those two teams are the ones that get there, Oklahoma's been to the playoff the last 2 years. They've not won yet, but they've been in the playoff the last 2 years. Okay, Georgia will start practice tomorrow again. The season is here. The Gators and Miami are playing this weekend. We will see what happens with that game. I am very eager to watch that game. I will be seeing Mikal Sherman play this weekend up in D.C., and then also Jordan Birch at in Columbia, South Carolina. So I'll be traveling quite a bit. I don't know what everyone else is doing at Dog Post, but we're moving around, needless to say. So stay tuned. We've got more information coming. Hey, listen, if you've not read What We Were Hearing, you need to go read that right now. That has stuff other than the Matthew Bowling things in there. And then Matt DeBerry wrote a very good story today about one of the commitments for the Dogs. I will link it down below for YouTube crowd. If you're watching on Twitter, just go to dogpost.com, dawgpost.com right now. Thanks you. This is Dean Legge. We will see you on the website.